Okay,
Happy birthday.
we are live, everybody. This is our November 1st meeting, and we are going to begin with a public hearing on proposed amendments to the 23 operating budget, and then have a presentation on the 2024 operating budget.
Take your time, get set up. Where do you want this?
Hi, Mayor and Council. Thank you for letting me come and speak to you today. So the first thing that I'm going to go over is the amendments. We do not have any general fund amendments. Everything is landing in the budgetary expectation for the expenses. I apologize, my stepdad's ringing on me. So we do have a few, though, that landed in the capital reserve. On Route 22, we've been experiencing some issues with the traffic lights, and we've had to do some additional repairs. And we've built in replacement preambles and processors in the future, but sometimes they're popping up that they need repaired before we can get to the scheduled repaired year. So this year, we had an additional light processor that needed to be replaced. We had only planned for one, and we needed to do two, so we have an additional $8,000 that needed to be amended into the budget. Additionally, the light preamble repairs came up, and this is the system that is used by the emergency services, and it signals the lights to change. So this was added into the amendments as well. Our overlay came in a little under budget, so we were able to offset those repairs with the overlayment that came in reduced. The Lions Run acid remediation came up this year, and this was a project that's going to be fully funded by grant revenues. So that's being added in. We've already received that grant revenue in, so we're adding now into the budget for 23 to recognize that we received those funds in and that those expenses will be coming on the book. Those are the only ones that affected the street and infrastructure. The facility, equipment, and other section of the capital reserve includes two different things. One, our brine pump sprayer needed to be replaced. The Public Works brine pump sprayer had a frame failure, and this piece of equipment had been rebuilt, had a rebuilt pump and engine in the past. So at this point in time, it's outlived its useful life. The cost for replacement is $20,000. So we budgeted that in there, and in the general fund, we were able to save a little money on the salt order that came through. So we have additional funds that will probably get pushed over at the end of the year if it's still available that could go to support this. But if not, we have the reserves available. Excuse me. Park improvements, the Kovalsik Park came back that there was increased costs for the park to get repaired in the up. It was higher than anticipated originally. This change includes completing paving and resurfacing of the parking lot, as well as installing a new fence. The proposed revenues to support these projects was the grant that I had spoken about for the acid mine remediation, and we brought in more real estate transfer tax, so I'm utilizing that to offset the brine pump sprayer and the police department body cams, which I haven't spoken about yet. I apologize. The police department has been requesting body cams. They would like 10 body cameras for the officers to wear during patrol with the public. The cameras will help the officers document the incidents more accurately, enhance security, and reduce liabilities. The additional real estate transfer taxes that we received are above the budgetary expectation, so those will be utilized for the body camera as well. The park improvement increases at Kovalsik Park. We received additional gas royalties in this year that weren't expected. So we would like to propose using some of those gas royalties to offset the increased costs at the park. That's the overview of the amendments that are coming through. The total amount that's being requested to amend is $624,000. And like I said, $500,000 is that grant that came in. So it would be an additional $124,000 that we found revenues to. This is not scheduled tonight for approval. I believe it's set up for next week's approval or next meeting's approval, but that covers all the changes. Are there any questions relating to the amendments?
Okay. See no questions from council. At this point, is there public comment on the amendments to the budget only? Okay, seeing none, I guess we can move on to the '24 budget.
Okay.
Okay. Right here. That. It's okay. It's not.
Okay, we met a few months ago to go over the capital improvement program. This presentation will be on the finalized operating budget, which includes the capital improvement for 2024 and all of the funds that the municipality has on the books. First, I'm going to go over the operating budget overview. Then we'll go into the general fund, and then the capital reserve and the parks, and then we'll go into special purposes. And then we'll have some time at the end to answer any questions that anybody might have. The total proposed operating budget for 2024 is $15,615,140. This is a 1.34% increase over the 2023 proposed budget. The general fund is proposing $10,567,825, which is a 5% increase over last year. The capital reserve is proposing $3,401,000, which is 11% decrease over the 2023 capital improvement plan. And the debt service remains the same at $417,113. The value of a mill is estimated to be $340,000 per mill. This is a 1% increase over last year. Now, to touch back, this is an estimate. In 2022, we have our finalized numbers, and in 2022, we estimated the millage to be $334,000, and it actually came in at $333,000, which is $158 less per mill. So we're normally pretty accurate with that, but it does sometimes have a little bit of a variance. Sometimes it's a little bit more, and sometimes it's a little bit less. But the estimated value for 24 is $340,000 per mill. The dedicated millage for '24 remains at 12.15, but it includes a proposed reallocation of the millage. General fund is proposing 5.1 mills, and this is to absorb the Medic 1 millage that I'll go over in a little bit. And so it wants to absorb the 0.1 over into the general fund so it can propose an increase of transfer over to Medic 1. And like I said, we'll talk about that in a little bit more in detail. The capital reserve for the capital projects and purchases is proposing a 3.45. This remains the same as what was proposed when we went over the capital improvement plan. Debt service is proposing a decreased millage of 0.1. This is as planned for the 2024 CIP, so to shift that over, we have enough funds in our debt at the end of the year for the fund balance to be able to support the April interest payment. So when we plan this out, we want to make sure we have enough millage to support the whole year, but we have to have enough in the fund balance at the end of the year to support the payment before real estate tax revenue starts coming in throughout the year. Emergency services is going to stay the same at 1.35. The library would stay the same at 1. Medic 1 would be reduced from 0.1 to 0 because it would be shifted to the general fund, and then a transfer would go over to support. And the hydrant is staying at 0.1. Real estate transfer taxes are estimated to generate about $700,000. This revenue source will continue to provide funding for the capital reserve, which can be postponed or divided into phases if the needs arise. The real estate transfer tax is subject to what's going on in the real estate market. So we can estimate, but it really just depends on what's going on in the year. Okay, we can go to the general fund.
Yep, just let me know when you want to click.
Okay. To go over the general fund, the total revenues and expenditures are proposed to increase by 5.2%. The causes of the increases relate to a handful of things. Administration salary increases were estimated on a COLA increase of 3.5. This was before the official COLA was released, and I looked that up today, and it came in at 3.2. So that can get changed, but it was estimated just to buffer that in. The laborers' union wages for public works are increasing 2.75 per the CBA contract. Healthcare increases were estimated at 10% for administration and also for the union. The engineering department has a departmental increase to start contracting bridge inspections in-house. Currently, PennDOT was doing that and using our liquid fuels money from what I've been told, and they were including certain bridges like for the school and things. So we think if we bring that in-house, we'll be able to have an engineer assess the ones that we know are ours, and we can better keep an eye on that and control the costs. Community development is taking on a zoning ordinance project, so there's an increase in that department. There is a small increase built in for utilities at the parks. We're staying in budget. I had a nice buffer in this year for utilities because we were seeing drastic increases last year, and we were able to stay within budget. So I didn't really need to increase the buildings, but we did see a large increase for the water and sewage due to the spray park and everything. It's getting used a lot, so I have some built in there. The traffic lights on 22, like I spoke about earlier, keep experiencing issues. So there is a cost increase over there just to support if anything happens next year like it did this year. We do still have the CIP projects to replace 2 traffic light processors a year. I believe there was 10 in total, and we started doing this last year. And then the cost of raw materials continue to rise. The cost increase in the Recreation Department are to allocate enough funding to support NRPA Event Management School for one of the recreation staff members, as well as the proposed salary and healthcare increases that I already spoke about. Revenue anticipations to support the increases in the expenses. EIT is estimated to increase from the end-of-year estimate. The 2023 is the first year with an entire year collection. 2023 was budgeted conservatively due to the unknown full-year collection rate, but we came in a little bit higher, so the increase is landing at about 3.5% over what the end-of-year budget expectation is. So between that and the other normal increases, it's able to support the 5% increase in expenses. The capital improvement plan remains the same as what we spoke about earlier. The only difference is Next year, I believe we're going to have enough money at the end of the year to support an additional shift over to the capital reserve for fund balance. So I have that added in there. But that's the only change to the capital plan, is a transfer of money from the general fund to the capital fund from the reserves. The total projects for 2023 amount to $2,723,000 and includes all the projects outlined in the 24 CIP. This includes $2,073,000 in street and infrastructure, $813,000 in building, land, and equipment purchases, $50,000 for a comprehensive plan, and $465,000 in park improvements. $850,000 will come from the state through the liquid fuels allocation for the road project. This is an increase of $50,000 from 2023. Real estate will assist the road projects in building and land equipment. Same with the real estate transfer tax. The reserves will be utilized for all the other projects. This is just an overview of the parks, just so you had a little bit more details to go over while we were looking at the hierarchy of everything. But we still are planning to do Duff Park, Townsend Park, and then the general park improvements that are supported by the general fund every year. The Special Purpose Fund has 3 different entities included in it. The first entity, and it's very hard to see up there, I apologize for that, but the first entity is the Emergency Management Fund, and this account tracks the revenues and expenses related to the repairs, maintenance, gasoline, insurance costs, and fire trucks purchased by the municipality for the fire departments. $100,000 will be available annually, and that it's the same as 23 as 24, and that is available from maintenance costs, tires, and gasoline and insurance costs for the departments. All purchases of the fire vehicles will be tracked in this fund, and the funding for these purchases will come directly from the real estate millage. Next year, there is a purchase slated for one of the fire companies in the amount of $900,000. Medic One. So I said there were some changes with Medic One. Medic One requested additional funding in 2024 to support the Murraysville community. This proposed contribution was based on the number of residents within the municipality. It was $5 per person based on a $22,000 community, 22,000 residents in the community. The 2024 budget recommends an interfund transfer for the annual Medic Fund contribution to be made from the general fund in lieu of allocating a set millage rate. The set millage that we had was amounted to approximately $63,000. So instead of proposing any millage increases or a set mill, if council would want to support that request, we would be able to support a transfer from the general fund over to the special purpose fund. And Murraysville Community Library is the third entity in this fund. This account will receive $1 million of real estate taxes, which is the same as 2023. The contribution amounts to approximately 72% of their total revenues. The library fund would receive approximately $340,000 in 2024. The revenue would be forwarded to the library on a monthly basis once taxes are received. The general fund will not provide additional funding until the tax revenue starts to come in April. And it's imperative that the library budgets accordingly based on when we start to receive the millage. Because there's no guarantee that 100% of the estimated taxes will be received. And real estate taxes aren't received through all 12 months. That is pretty much the overview of the budget. Are there any questions or things that want to be talked about?
Thank you for the excellent summary. I have just one question, and that's about the bridge inspections and us taking that in-house.
I'm sorry, about the bridge inspections?
I hate these microphones. Yes, I said thank you for the excellent summary. I have just one question, and that's about the bridge inspections. Is there any sort of training that our folks need or will need to acquire in order to be able to do the bridge inspections? And/or is there any risk to us from a liability perspective taking that on from PennDOT?
Well, I can say what I do know, but then I think that Michael might be able to piggyback off of it. We would not be doing them in-house. They are done by engineers that specifically look at bridges and deal with bridges on a regular basis. Now, is it Gibson?
Yeah, we would basically contract the work out. Right now, as I understand it, the state is doing that work, and they're taking part of the liquid fuels funding allocation to compensate for that work. So by bringing it in-house, we're still contracting it out, but we're determining who the engineering firm would be, and we would use the liquid fuels funding or another source of funding to pay for that. But I think that we're going to bring down some of our costs in doing so.
That makes
Rationale
sense.
is behind that.
And if we're contracting it out, we're ensuring that they're bonded, licensed, insured, et cetera. We don't have to worry about
Yes, it's likely that we would utilize Gibson Thomas in that capacity, and obviously they have quite a bit of familiarity with that type of work.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'm not sure that there would be, but are there any revenues coming in from Olympus Energy in the form of royalties, or is that premature?
No, yes, we receive gas royalties in. Olympus does send some. We get small amounts in the general fund for one park, and then the rest of them, when we do receive them in, are going to the capital reserve into the parks fund right now to support future projects.
That will be in 2024?
We started receiving them some in this year, and they've been going to the parks. So if we continue to receive any moving forward, under the current assumption, it would still be going into the parks.
Just to be clear, the contract that was approved earlier in the year, as well as the ones we've recently been contemplating, those funds would likely be coming in 2024, but the production hasn't started at some of those wells, so the royalties haven't been received yet. But we do have royalties from other gas wells, and I think that's partly what JC is also referring to. So some funding, some revenue has come in from gas wells, but the ones that were decided earlier in the year and the ones that we're contemplating now, those would probably start to take place in 24.
Yep. Currently, the gas royalties that we've received up till this year, they tended to be rather small. So it was never something that we looked at and said, okay, we can budget this in as a whole revenue source. It more or less would build up where we could use that for something. But this year, we started getting a little bit more in. Now, moving forward, unless we have a contract that we know exactly how much it is, it's hard to say, okay, let's budget this specific amount for a certain thing. So currently in 23, I just had it going to parks, and in 24, now that we know that this is going through, if we have any more, thank you. If we have any more future idea of the exact amounts, I can utilize those amounts to put into the budget. But usually gas royalties, it's just based off consumption or how much they're able to pull. So it's subject to how much they get out of the well, which makes the payment.
JC, thank you so much you can tell how much time you guys put into this and that you put into this, and thank you very much for doing that. It's very, very well done. I just had one question on the emergency equipment purchase and repair account. You had mentioned the fire truck purchase or fire purchase for fire department. Do we know which department that was?
Yes, let me look. I have it. If you would go to Section 8 in your book, there is, on page 56, there is a funding schedule. So it looks like 24 is White Valley.
White Valley, yeah, I see it now. Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Now, this is a little bit different than last year's. I know the fire departments met with some people earlier this year, and they rearranged this schedule because the inflationary costs on the fire department vehicles was a little bit higher than, it's hard to plan out this many years. So they rearranged this a little bit to try to fit them in the right year and space it out a little bit. So this is a little bit different than what last year's was.
Okay, further questions or concerns from council? Okay. Hearing none, would anyone in the public like to give comment on the 2024 budget only? Okay, seeing none, any final thoughts about the budget?
No, it was a pleasure going through everything, and I think it's a really good plan. But if anybody has any comments or concerns that arise before this comes back out for approval, just reach out and let me know.
Awesome, as always, thanks again. This is a beautiful document to have, and the summary is amazing.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you.
Very good.
So with that, can I have a motion to close the public hearing, please?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Thank you, Jamie and Mac. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, public hearing is closed. We will now call to order our regular voting meeting. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Dice,
Here.
Mr. Spadaro,
Here.
Mrs. Lane,
Present.
Dr. Lee Corns,
Here.
Mr. Stepanovich,
Here.
Mr. Lee Mack,
Here.
Mr. McKenna,
Here.
Mayor Sinan.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and
Okay. Mr. Nestico, do we have any unlisted amendments this evening?
No unlisted amendments this evening.
That brings us to our consent calendar items, which are just the minutes. Any questions or concerns about the minutes? Hearing none, can I have a motion, please?
Make a motion to approve the consent calendar items.
Second.
Thank you, Jamie and Jamie. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. That brings us to comments by the mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Dice. First up, as you've seen with the cold weather snap, we have leaves everywhere. So we have the curbside leaf collection program going. Republic Services will conduct municipal-wide sweeps to collect leaf and yard waste. To schedule a pickup, and you must schedule a pickup or they will not pick them up, one of the collection dates, please fill out the curbside leaf collection program form on the municipal website at www.murraysville.com. It's under About Us and select forms, permits, and maps. There's a 20-bag limit each collection date. The deadline to sign up for each date is the Thursday before the pickup. The next date is November 18th, and the last date is December the 9th. Next up, our Public Works Department is hiring. The municipality of Murraysville is seeking qualified applicants for the position of full-time skilled labor within the Public Works Department. Although a CDL-A license with the air brake restriction removed is preferred, an applicant who does not possess the preferred license once hired will have 180 days to obtain a CDL-A license with the air brake restriction removed. Applicants are required to lift 100 pounds, have the ability to work in extreme weather conditions for long periods of time. A high school diploma or GED equivalent is required. Their position also involves the availability for overtime hours, day and night. General construction, asphalt, masonry, and turf maintenance skills are preferred but not mandatory. Next up, we're hiring an administrative assistant part-time. If we can find one, the qualified person for this job performs a variety of routine and complex clerical, secretarial, and administrative work in keeping official records and providing administrative support to the Public Works Director and staff. This work will include telephone answering, typing, word processing, and records management. It is a part-time position with a somewhat flexible 16 to 20 hours per week. Next, we have another glass recycling pop-up collection event sponsored by the municipality of Murraysville Republic Services. Saturday, December 2nd, Veterans Field parking lot, 4200 Sardis Road, Murraysville, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Residents are also encouraged to support the Loaves and Fishes Emergency Food Pantry by donating non-perishable food items. Food Pantry will be at the pavilion during accepting the drive-through donations during those hours. And lastly, This is for youngsters 5 years and younger, and they must have an adult there for supervision. It's a free music session at the community center. It's called Play Notes. Join our 40-minute music session that is fun, interactive, and promotes developmental skills. It's November the 6th at 5:30, 3091 Carson Street at the community center. RSVPs are appreciated by emailing scheduling@playnotes.org. And that concludes my messages for this evening.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
That brings us to comments by the Chief Administrator, Mr. Metcalf.
I'll just briefly piggyback on what the mayor had mentioned about the opportunities in the Public Works Department for both the laborer and the administrative assistant. We've had quite a few applications come in, but if there is anybody that may be interested in this opportunity, please consider applying. While we've had a lot of applicants, we've conducted a lot of interviews, we're also finding it difficult to actually land an employee. We're going through quite a bit of an extensive interview process, but for one reason or another, we're still trying to locate employees for both of those positions. And then lastly, I'll just mention that the Trick or Treat on the Trail was a great success for the rec department. They had roughly 500 kids attend, and quite a few vendors participated, and all in all, I got a lot of positive feedback about the event, so I just wanted to share that with council as well.
Awesome. Okay, that brings us to community input. This is your chance to talk about whatever you want, so long as it is 3 minutes or less. Let's see. Okay, we'll begin with the people who signed up, but don't worry if you didn't sign up. First on the list is Mr. David L. Connors. And please just state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is David L. Connors. I live at 2208 Woodmont Drive, Export, PA.
There.
I'm here on behalf of my son. He was unable to come because of work. He lives at 4834 Treesdale Court.
Sorry.
And
The meeting is not being
the
broadcast.
gentleman that,
You have any way to know that?
pardon, sir?
Channel 20.
It's,
I think Mike, sorry, his microphone, I think, so on. He went back.
Oh,
yeah, sorry.
You can continue, sir, don't worry about it.
okay. Well, my son lives up on Treesdale Court. The gentleman down below him is Mr. Shepherd. About a week and a half ago, he decided to put a speed bump in the right-of-way going up to the houses. He just brought a truck in, dumped a bunch of stone, put up a sign, and that's been it since. Now, my son, unable to get his car out. My wife can't get her car up because the bump is too big, plus it's just loose stone. I contacted the Pennsylvania department. They pretty much kicked everything from, when I talked to Murraysville, they kicked it to PennDOT, PennDOT kicked it back here. About a week and a half ago also, they had a big powwow up there for some other meeting because of water problems. My son's insurance company was there. They saw the speed bump, and they are requiring or would like to have a sign-off from the chief of police, the fire marshal, and EMS that it would not curtail them from being able to get up to the house. All right. The biggest problem is being that, well, it's just loose stone. It fills up with water in the wintertime. It could freeze and become a big block of ice. Right now, I have a hard time getting my van up over top of it because Mr. Shepherd keeps putting more stone on, more stone, more stone. So I don't know. It's a real problem. I've talked with Murraysville about it. I'm trying to get this resolved for my son. His wife is very concerned about not being able to get an EMS up there or, a fire truck or anything. And according to the Pennsylvania code, there are codes for speed bumps, which I did not know. The way it's made, size, everything, the whole 9 yards. Mr. Shepherd just keeps pounding it up. My van has an extremely hard time just getting up there. And so if we can get with the police, fire marshal, and the EMS, you probably could help me a lot faster, because I asked around, and it's kind of hard getting everybody together. And we can resolve this problem, get rid of this thing. It's just a harassment is what it is. And I'm sorry I'm speaking on my own part in that, but it's something that I'm afraid that, you know, if there was a fire or something and it's the middle of winter and night, they may not be able to get up there. And where they got to get the water is clear down at the end of the street. So they got it's a long haul and everything else. There's no reason for the speed bump. It's in a driveway. I mean, I'm sorry, but other than that, one other quick thing.
Sir, we're at 4 minutes, so can we just wrap this up really quick?
Yeah,
You said you had one more thing, just wrap it up really quick?
yeah. It's just at the beginning of the right-of-way going up, Mr. Shepherd installed a pylon with an address in it. All right, my understanding, Murraysville doesn't allow those. The other thing, the reason why I bring it up is we've had deliveries that, because he has the address on the left-hand side of the road going up, and it's at even, that's an odd side. So some of the places, they haven't dropped anything, or they left, or they dropped it at the neighbor's house. You know, it's very confusing. So it's something that I think Murraysville needs to take a look at also.
All right.
I'm sorry for taking up your time.
That's all right, sir. I'll confer with staff.
Hey, Nat, I had a quick question for him. Is that speed bump, is that in that right of way? I'm familiar with that.
It's right in the
Been up
middle
there
of the
before.
right of way.
So it's like when you come up right in front of his house,
Well, when you come up, you go up the road, up that,
that private driveway that's.
yeah, you go up about 25, 50 feet. It's pretty much in the middle
Okay.
of that. And then, like I say, in the past week and a half, he's just keeps piling more on top. So every time I go across with my van, naturally, I knock it down.
Yeah.
You know?
Thank you.
It's just, and it's also, he said it was a diverter for the rain. If that be the case, he's diverting it down into the neighbor's yard. So, you know, and I really appreciate your time. I'm sorry very much.
No,
Okay.
we'll investigate it, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that brings us to Mr. Jason Plank, and please just state your name and address. Are you a Murraysville resident, sir?
No, sir.
Can I ask what you're going to be speaking about?
Speaking about fracking in the parks.
Okay,
I know it's not an item of discussion. It was at the previous meeting. I missed that meeting. I'd like to speak about it.
okay, I'm just going to ask council, are you a taxpayer in Murraysville?
No, sir.
Are we all right with letting this individual have 3 minutes to speak to us, because we're not actually required to?
What is it again you're
He
speaking?
wants to speak about fracking in the parks.
Okay.
I
I think we have other people speaking about fracking.
I think we should hear our residents first.
Okay, yeah, let's move on to some of the residents, sir. Okay, that brings us to Mr. Tom R. Pike, and please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Tom Pike. I live at 3806 Greensburg Pike. I'm speaking on behalf of the 34 members that Protect PT has in Murraysville tonight. This is...
So, sir, do you live in Murraysville?
No, I'm speaking on behalf of 34 members that Protect PT has in Murraysville. That's what they pay me to do. They delegate to me the responsibility of learning about issues in their backyard, and then they send me to meetings that have issues of concern to them.
Just for completeness, does council have a problem with giving this individual 3 minutes? He represents
He's
individuals?
spoken before, but if it could be limited to 3 minutes, I would be okay with it.
Any objections?
I'm okay with it.
Is there anyone else on the list who is a resident before we hear him speak? I think they should be heard prior.
I believe there is one, if we want to do that, and then we'll let these individuals.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Look at the last one. He did.
So, yeah. My name is Karen Kozich, and I have been a resident of Murraysville for 22
Can
years.
you say your name and address for the record?
I'm sorry, Karen Kozich, and I live at 280 Jefferson Street in Franklin Estates, and I've been there for 22 years.
Thank you.
I'm a proud resident of Murraysville. I've raised 7 children here. They've all turned out well from Franklin Regional. In fact, most of the times I've been in this room is because they're, here to receive awards or whatever. So I love my community is my point, and I also love the parks. We've spent a ton of time in Duff Park, and as Murraysville Community Park has grown as I've lived here over the years, and I'm just amazed at the number of people there and the Rails to Trails project. I'm at Duff Park when it's nice out 2-3 times a week. I'm there with my daughter, Elizabeth, who has chosen to stay in Murraysville because she loves it and wants to buy a home. She almost bought a home about a month ago, but decided not to, much to their sadness, because they learned of many potential threats from fracking, that proposed fracking in the area where they were going to buy the house. There are all kinds of wells popping up. And this is not the reputation we want in Murraysville for our home value and for the safety of my children and my grandchildren. My daughter has one son who is 2 years old. She's expecting a baby in January. Her husband works for the FDA, and he did the research, and I respect that research, and he decided that they were not going to buy a home due to the threats, the environmental threats, the health threats, the EPA violations that these companies have. Olympus has 22 violations already from this well that we already have, the Titus well, and we're looking to expand it. And I'm very sad and stressed about what we're allowing in our community. We're fighting it all around us. We're winning battles in Monroeville and other areas around Murraysville, and I would like to continue winning those battles here and not allow this simply for the revenue. And as you heard, it's not even that much revenue. And is it worth my daughter refusing a home that they could afford? It's hard to find a house you can afford in this community, right? This is a young couple, well-educated, with college debt, which they all have. They can't buy a house. They found one they could afford, and then they couldn't buy it because of the threat of fracking. This is very sad as far as I'm concerned. And I'm sad that there aren't more people here, but it's not because they don't care. I contacted multiple friends who said, Karen, we really want to be there tonight. It was kind of last minute that I found out about the meeting. They said, please speak for us. One has an elderly mother that she couldn't leave. Another is a nurse. She had to work tonight. So it's not that they don't care, okay? So they care. They asked me to speak, and they all asked me to let them know how it went. Because, we're aware that industry is dangerous and has threats, and that it should remain in industrial zones and not in our backyards and not in our parks and not in our wet zones, right? I have all these pictures of my grandson playing in the creek at Duff Park, right? There's water here, and what do you think is seeping up out of that water when you send all these dangerous chemicals down to do the fracking, right? That's coming back up to poison us. And, we've been through this so many times, right? I mean, Rachel Carson, right? You guys know about environmental threats, right? And we do not have to accept them in our community, all right? So I just want to let you all know that we respect the work you do. We know you work hard, and we know that you have a budget to balance, but that we should look for other ways. And if you let these people know that if we have other fundraisers in place of allowing these dangers to our park, that we will all help. And we will participate, and we will just contribute money, right? Murraysville has some money, and we will contribute to keep these dangers so that our children can buy homes and not have to move away to safer places where they're not allowing fracking. So I will stop. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, so at this point, I will ask, are there any other Murraysville residents or taxpayers who want to give comment? If so, just come on up. Understood, ma'am. So that brings us now to Mr. Pike. So council, just putting it out again, are we all right with him giving 3 minutes? What is everyone's thoughts?
Dane, I think we need to consider what our standard is at the meeting, what our rules are. And I think it has been historic that you must be a taxpayer unless you are an attorney representing the taxpayers in order to speak.
Let Olympus speak. They don't represent your taxpayers. These
Well,
taxpayers
but-
pay me to come here.
Okay.
Well-
They also are requested to speak by council.
I don't have a problem with it, Dane. I think
My question would be, I know Mr. Pike spoke previously, is this new?
There's new information in this comment, Mr. Stepanovich.
Okay, let's say this, it sounds to me like it's a little divergent. I'm going to say, Mr. Pike, we'll just give you 3 minutes. And if you could even confer with Mr. Plank, because I think we're just going to let one person from outside of Pennsylvania speak tonight.
No one is here from outside Pennsylvania. Mr.
Excuse me,
Plank
outside
is
Murraysville. I apologize.
understood. Mr. Plank was born and raised in Murraysville, as was I.
Okay, so we're going to go with 3 minutes and just whatever you want to tell us, okay?
Understood. My boss did not send me here to talk about fracking. We are a small organization with limited funds. I'm here because a member in Murraysville asked for our help. So I pushed my boss to spend some of our precious money here because I care about the people who live here. I have sent each of you Olympus's 807 violations. I have sent documentation of impacts to surface water at Deer Lakes Park after Allegheny County Council leased the subsurface for fracking in 2014, a decision they sorely regretted, which led to them banning future parkland subsurface leases last year. We do not want Duff Park to look like this, and I use that park. I don't expect you to have read all the things that I sent yet. I understand you only work for the municipality part-time. I'm grateful to each of you for the work you've done, particularly Councilmembers Stepanovich, McKenna, and Lemak. As I mentioned to each of them, there are other ways to make money for the municipality that are not so legally problematic. There are at least 3 distinct legal problems with proceeding with these leases. First off, Murraysville does not own the subsurface gas rights to Duff Park. That opening it up to fracking would open the municipality up to serious legal liability. You cannot sell something you do not own. Secondly, these leases would violate the Pennsylvania Constitution, Article 1, Section 27. In 1971, the voters of the Commonwealth passed Article 1, Section 27 by a 4-to-1 margin. It reads, "The people have a right to clean air, pure water, and to the preservation of the natural, scenic, historic, and aesthetic values of the environment. Pennsylvania's public natural resources are the common property of all the people, including generations yet to come. As trustee of these resources, the Commonwealth shall conserve and maintain them for the benefit of all people." This is not a case where we have to wonder about the intentions of dead founders from 300 years ago. Franklin L. Curry, who wrote Article 1, Section 27, is still alive to tell us what his intent was. He wrote in an article on Conservation Advocate that it means the government, quote, "would be the trustee of our natural resources for future generations rather than a silent accomplice to their exploitation. Thus, I believe, for all time to come, the power of government would be used to protect and preserve our environment." He goes on to say, municipalities are obligated to implement Article 1, Section 27. When you took office, you swore an oath to, quote, "preserve the natural, scenic, historic, and aesthetic values of the environment." Failing to live up to this obligation would open the municipality up to serious legal liability. Lastly, PEDF versus Commonwealth prohibits this municipality from depositing any money from these lease sales into the general fund. Even though money is fungible, if you were to lease these parks, the PEDF versus Commonwealth precedent would present a serious legal liability. This is not free money. It comes with strings attached. Solve any 2 of these legal problems, and the third will remain. You cannot sell what you do not own. You've sworn an oath that specifically binds you against completing these leases. And if you somehow lease them anyway, you would have trouble spending the money. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if there is no other public comment tonight from Murraysville taxpayers or residents, we will be moving on to our liaison comments and committee reports. Let's start at this end tonight. Jason?
Thanks, Dane. Library met last week. Their municipal support is essentially 99% paid, right? So they got the majority of their budget in hand. So they're working through some of those expenses and challenges if you will. However, circulation is up 6.5% from 2022. The active users that are online are up 11.6%, and their programming attendance, which are events at the library, are up 28.2%. So those are all good trends.
Awesome.
That's all.
All right, thank you. Carl?
The Murraysville Parks and Recreation Foundation meets on November 20th, which is a Monday. The Planning Commission will be meeting on November 14th, which is a Tuesday.
Awesome, thank you. Tony?
Yeah, our next meeting for Medic One is November 16th.
Thank you. Jamie?
Have not had another meeting.
Okay. Jamie?
Last school board meeting was this past Monday, the 23rd. The Monday before, I was not able to attend. The next meeting is November 20th.
Awesome, thank you. Matt?
The Parks and Recreation Committee, we meet on November 14th. Just a big thank you to them for this year. Their events all went very, very well. Great concerts in the park. The Trick or Treat on the Trail, I had tremendous feedback from the community on. They had, like Mike said, 500 kids and as well as a lot of vendors. So it was a great success, and right now kind of not a lot going on because of the cold weather coming in, but but we're going to certainly get prepared for next year.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, that brings us to our workshop items. So we are going to begin with a discussion regarding Skeena Reserve.
FTMSA?
FTMSA, I want to say they're going to, I have to figure out when they're going to meet because of Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, that brings us to a discussion on Skeena Reserve. I know there was previous discussion on this at the last meeting, so this is everyone's chance to state their feelings. Oh, okay. Well, then this is our first time to discuss it. Mike, do you want to lead us in?
Sure. The municipality has been approached by an individual seeking to enter into an agreement with the municipality to provide maintenance services to the Skeena Reserve area. Part of that maintenance agreement would be to groom the trail system that exists or carve out new trails within the reserve, to cut down trees, remove invasive plants, and similar sort of activity. We did receive a draft agreement from the individual relative to the maintenance agreement, and in speaking with the solicitor, staff had some concerns regarding this agreement. There are a few noteworthy items. Most specifically would be provisions relating to insurance and the municipality indemnifying the individual. Occurred in the reserve. Additionally, the agreement would come with the municipality having to afford some additional concessions regarding zoning and setbacks and similar items of concern. So this is not a typical agreement. The municipality does not have any other agreements in effect with other community maintenance at any of the parks or reserve areas. So I think that not only would you be setting some level of precedent by entering into agreement with a private resident, but the existing agreement does come with some concern. So that is, I guess, the initial rundown of what we're considering here. And I think at this point, I had an expectation that Mr. Skeena may be present here this evening to present some feedback regarding the proposal. I don't see him here in attendance. I do know that time was somewhat of the essence for the individual because he wanted to purchase equipment to be able to take on this sort of activity. It would be pretty expensive equipment, tens of thousands of dollars. And so in order to secure that equipment, I think that he needed an answer from the municipality we would entertain. And so that's, I guess, a bit of the rundown, and a decision should be made this evening, if at all possible, from council as to whether or not they want to entertain something like this or not. I can certainly answer any further questions. I was trying to just hit the bullet points, but
It appears that Mr. Skeena is, he really wants to do a lot to help. I think there's no question there, but he's asking us to have an individual agreement which would set a precedent. And it just, from what I saw and read, it just seems to be very difficult for the municipality to do that.
How long has that gone without maintenance?
well, I can't say that I know that for sure. I do know that there are volunteers that go into the reserve and maintain it, but what he is proposing is to kind of cut back and recreate some of the trail system. That trail system does exist, albeit overgrown, and it's, I think, a little bit difficult in some areas to pass through, fallen trees, things like that. So I don't know when the last time we had active and ongoing maintenance activities in there, but any activity that would have taken place in this area would have been from the effort from volunteers. We've never sent staff into this reserve or even some of the other parks to maintain the trail systems. Historically, those have been maintained, and the improvements were undertaken by volunteers. So I know there are volunteers in the reserve. Primarily, those volunteers right now are primarily focusing on removing invasive species of plants and things like that. So I don't know when the last time the trails were actually cut back or groomed. I can't answer that.
I can
Is it
piggyback.
worth putting it out there that we need volunteers? See what we get?
Yeah, absolutely. I can piggyback a little bit on what Mike said. Just this has come up a lot in the Parks and Recreation committee meetings, and we have been down there to look at this. There have been proposals to start to hand cut back that, and they've met there. I know the Boy Scouts were looking to do some projects where they were doing trail markers and whatnot that we may implement there. Very tough terrain. Bill was involved in that, where we could possibly get, a piece of equipment from the municipality in there. I know a couple members of the Parks and Recreation Committee had smaller pieces of residential equipment that was maybe easier to get in there. So it's on the map for the Parks and Recreation to address. It's something we're trying to do. It's very overgrown. But it's going to be a lot of handwork and whatnot. But I don't think it necessarily means that we relinquish our control over that park. I don't see that as a good idea.
Yeah, I can say we've lived there coming on 26 years. My husband used to take our kids when they were young and walk those trails when they were clear. And my son said, Mom, just don't even go back there because there's so many briars, you just would hate it. So I know that it does need some work, and we need to definitely, preserve our parks. I hate to, say this nicely, look a gift horse in the mouth. I mean, he's volunteering time and he's volunteering money to help with this, but I would like to see it done in such a way where it's, more of a trust basis as opposed to a contractual basis. If there's some way to work with Mr. Skeena, I'm assuming it's Skeena Reserve. He's Mr. Skeena. There's obviously a filial relationship there somewhere that he seems to have a vested interest in this. So I think his contribution in some way would definitely be very important, just historically, to the park as well. He probably knows how those trails are, and he probably remembers them from being when he was younger. So that's my input.
I would concur with those saying that, we certainly don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth, and we are certainly very grateful to Mr. Skeena for his offer and his generosity in offering this. With that said, and maybe, Mayor, you recall, I'm not sure who else here would recall, if memory serves me correctly, there was a little bit of contention around the municipality's receipt of that property in the first place as a park, and it was never intended to be a park that we would maintain to a high level.
That's correct. The trails were to be maintained by volunteers. That was the original purpose of when we walked it many years. The trails were fairly open when we first took it over. I know that because I did walk it. Me and Mrs. Kearns walked it. Mm-hmm. But the trails were to be maintained by volunteers. And I think maybe the first idea is turn this back over to Parks and Recreation and let them kick it around to see what they can come up with.
Yeah, my question, I understand and appreciate that Parks is looking at that. It's a lovely park. It's Mrs. Ling, it's kind of right actually in between her house and my own. It would be great to walk with my kids there, but I also didn't want to request, incurring extra cost to municipality. Are we receiving a large volume of complaints from residents not directly affiliated with Parks and Rec as requesting cleanup?
No, we haven't. But a few of the members of the Parks and Recreation are similar to you two and live in that area. And she's one that does try to volunteer and help with that. So she's sort of been leading that charge to what can we do to get there. And I think, I wish we could just say we could, get a municipal piece of equipment with a brush hog on the front and come through, but I think it's past that point. Like, I think it's very tough terrain, it's very narrow, it's very steep, so it's kind of hard to do that, so it's a lot of work. So I think what we're trying to do is, figure out a plan of action, where we start with it, whether it be on one end or the other, and just work our way in, see if we can get volunteers from the community to help with that. Like I said, the Boy Scouts have really helped with a lot of the trails in Townsend, and that putting the signs up for the trail markers and everything like that. So they volunteered to, also help with this project. So I agree that I think it's great to have someone like Mr. Skina that's willing to put time and money up. But on the other hand, I don't think it's the right fit for us to relinquish any control over that area or that park for that.
My
don't
two
see that
cents.
being the best avenue to take. I think if we kicked it back to Parks and Recreation and say, let's get a plan together with this, and even if it, they can propose, I know the Parks Foundations are looking for things, possibly projects to do, we can put it up to them. And even if it has to come back to the municipality with a little bit of money that needs to do that, I think if a plan got in place, we could work with something. So.
Perhaps putting some of that Boy Scout money toward Eagle Scout funding.
There you go.
We're getting some of that done.
Yeah, and my two cents is, again, we're extremely grateful to Mr. Skina's offer, but I think that the way his proposal is outlined, it increases the risk and potentially the cost to us exponentially should something untoward occur, just from a liability standpoint.
Yeah, so it sounds like we've kind of achieved a consensus here. So it's a no to the agreement. However, we are going to ask that Parks and Rec just look into the Skeena Reserve generally and maybe come up with a plan.
Yep, some plan.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So that's 9A. That brings us to 9B, a discussion regarding the short-term rental ordinance. So obviously, we've discussed this several times, put it off several times because we do not have all 7 members, and it looks like this will likely be 4-3. So no particular order. This is everyone's chance to just state how they feel, and then I think at the end here, we'll probably take a straw vote just to see where everybody is. I generally leave it open to everyone, but maybe if we just go down the line, but people might want to reply to each other.
May I kick things
Oh,
off?
absolutely.
Okay. As you all know, this is a discussion item. I did also list this item on the agenda for consideration under 14A. So what staff would be seeking there is if there is a consensus to vote on this ordinance tonight under 14A, we would just need some direction on primarily which districts would short-term rentals be either approved or not approved in the municipality. So that's the primary concern at this point from a staff standpoint. There are a few other items within the ordinance that we can work through, but the one outstanding item that I think we need to get a consensus on is which districts do you want to either permit or not permit this sort of activity, if at all.
Okay.
I would like to
I'll start it off.
with one thing. I object to it being in the residential area at all. Basically because we're saying on this ordinance now that they can build, they can have it if they have 5 acres. Even with 5 acres, people are going to change it, sneaking in under 4 acres or 3 acres or 2 acres? Who's going to check it? So on. And also, the more you get into the residential areas with these rentals, they become businesses. So now the residential becomes a mixed use because you have businesses and now you have residential. That's why I think we should keep it out of residential altogether and put it where we said in mixed use and commercial. We don't have to put it in residential. There's a lot of people in the residential, we could say 10 acres, they still don't want it because they think it's going to end up next to them. And like some people say, I don't want my kids playing with different people every weekend and not knowing who they are. So that's my opinion.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll rebut. So I've said this many, many times before. I think that all of the zoning should be removed from the ordinance in entirety. I think it should be a code issue and an enforcement issue. We don't currently have any problems with this in Murraysville. And if it were to become a problem, we could certainly go back and relook at the ordinance. We are not a destination vacation area. We don't have a problem. I was approached in Aldi's just last week by a resident. She stopped me and she said, hey, just so you know, I had a property on Airbnb. I live in Murraysville. It wasn't a short-term rental. Just because somebody lists a property on Airbnb, which is what we have been looking at to kind of gauge what we have here in the community, doesn't mean it's a short-term rental. Short-term rentals are defined by rentals that are 30 days or less. Long-term rentals are 31 days or more. 1 day delineation between what's short-term and what's long-term. 2, as far as going and it being a business, we have clearly defined ordinances which talk about running a business out of your home. You can run a business out of your home. You just can't have a storefront out of your home. If I recall that correctly, anybody can correct me if I'm doing that wrong. So if we go on that premise, then we will have to also eliminate all of our long-term rentals because that would fall under the same logic. I don't think we would have a real good reception to getting rid of our long-term rentals in this community, if that's how we're going to define it. I think we're making a mountain out of a molehill right now because we don't have a problem. I think we either need to just table it and not put an ordinance into effect, or we need to vote to eliminate all of the zoning, let play out what play out. We really don't have a problem. I know some people were talking about they were worried about who's going to be coming into their neighborhood. Well, we need to be concerned about the 18 members that either live here or who work here who are on Megan's Law list. We should be a little bit more concerned about that, okay? People who are actual known pedophiles that are in the community, if that's, what your concern is. These people are giving their name, their address, their credit card information. Meanwhile, we got 22 with human trafficking going on. I mean, we have other bigger concerns than short-term rentals in our community. That's my piece. Thank you.
Okay. I have a few thoughts. One, I think it just made me think from what Jamie was saying about, you're allowed to have a business in the residential without a storefront, but it makes me think of Justice Potter, and his comment was, I can't define, pornography, okay, but I know it when I see it. When you have 24 rentals in a year, that's a business, okay? I don't care what you want to say, that's a business to me. But the issue, I think, is more, and I can, and Jason can say what he wants, but I do know that we had, for example, the situation in the north side. We all know of that, where there was a Airbnb, there was a party, if you will, there was gunfire, and there were 2 people killed, 2 minors killed during that in 1922. Also, a situation here, Governor DeSantis in one of his presidential debates, and his focus was on fentanyl, okay, basically the harm that can come from fentanyl, and we all know that, and crossing the border, et cetera, and so forth. But the situation that he gave was an Airbnb rental in Florida where some people had an 18-month-old child crawling on the floor, got some fentanyl, ingested it, and died. And I think that kind of thing can happen. Would it happen regularly? Of course not. Could it happen? Yes. I just am against it.
The fentanyl was from the previous owners.
Yes.
Yeah, it was from the previous people that rented that building.
Okay. Anyone else? I can just, Mac, you want?
Sure, I'll go. I fall more on the side with Jamie on this. I think that we don't have an issue with this here in Murraysville, but I also think it's something we need to keep an eye on. I feel that it shouldn't be a zoning-based decision. I think this should be permitted and regulated through permits, through the municipality to do that. I don't think it's the municipality's place to tell a resident they can or can't rent their home to someone on a legitimate site like that. And do that. I mean, I think you could have crime in a long-term rental too. I mean, does that mean we don't do long-term rentals? It just, I just feel like that one sort of comes back to me when we were thinking of adding the liquor license to wherever. I mean, the law's the law. If you follow the law, you're not going to get in trouble. And if you do things the right way, which most of these all do, we've never had any issues at all with any of the ones that are there. Does that mean we can't in the future put a stop to it if it becomes out of control? Absolutely we can. We can do it immediately if we wanted to, but I don't think that, if members of the community in an economic time like we're having now where people can't afford anything, groceries, everything, is the inflation's insane in this country. And, why would our municipality tell our own residents what they can and can't do with their own home? So I don't feel that's our place. I feel like we need to keep a finger on it. I think we need to have permits if you want to do that. And if you have a violation, there's got to be things in place, whether that's, a written warning first, another warning, and then you're done doing it. We can set rules up like that, and we can monitor it and see how it goes as far as if we have issues or if we don't, and maybe address it there. But I just feel like it definitely shouldn't be according to certain zoning types. And the business side of things, like you can't run a business out of there like a storefront or anything. So it's not like people are renting this for a week to have a business out of it. That's not usually. Right now in Murraysville, it's people coming for a wedding, graduation parties, christenings, and they want to stay by their family, and they're going to rent a home here. We're not a vacation destination. We're not a party destination for that. So that's my thoughts.
And I'll just echo those sentiments. You basically hit every point I was going to make, which is I'm fine with registration and inspection, but at this point, these short-term rentals have not been a problem in this community, and just in the most general sense, I don't think the government should be regulating non-problems. If it becomes a problem, then this council can step in and regulate it however they need to. But at this point, if it's a non-problem, I just don't believe we should go overboard in regulating it beyond registration and permits and inspections.
I'll concur with Dane and Mac and Jamie. I think we've espoused kind of keeping government small and using local government to support the community without over-encroaching. To some of the points that were made, I think historically I've voted and been clear that I support property owners' rights to make money, provided, of course, that they are not negatively impacting their community and adjacent property owners. So when I brainstorm that, I can see really two primary ways that short-term rentals could potentially negatively impact the community. And I would say, number one, if it lowers property values. Number two, if it affects quality of life. When I researched the impact of short-term rentals on property values, the only negative statistics that I saw were in areas that were already high tourist destinations where the short-term rentals became so prevalent that it was negatively impacting income for other types of businesses. That would not be a concern for us, and therefore I strike that from being any real challenge. There is the very real potential of a short-term rental and occupants of a short-term rental negatively impacting the quality of life of another neighbor, for example, if they're having some crazy party or something. But we don't permit that anywhere within the community, so I don't know that there's a reason to add an extra law for that. should there be a major issue with, say, noise or something else, drug use. That's why we have police. That's why we have code enforcement. Absolutely, there could be a concern of fentanyl or a shooting, but quite frankly, just from the very low proportion of short-term rentals compared to occupied dwellings in this community, and where even if that increased some, I think statistically we're more likely to see shootings in schools than we are in short-term rental units. Again, we're not going to become a community full of short-term rental units. We're not a tourist destination. We're not a vacation destination. I would absolutely support an ordinance that includes permitting, that includes code enforcement, or certainly involves code enforcement, but only if that ordinance removed the zoning requirements. And quite frankly, I would also look at the max occupancy clause that's in the ordinance as it's written, because I would say we have many homes that are 4 to 5 bedroom, but I don't unless we could move to some other sort of consensus to move forward. But as it is, I don't support the ordinance, and I don't want to add overregulation where it's not called for. Final comment, we really haven't had anyone coming to speak negatively about short-term rentals overall. Most of the feedback that we've received in writing or in person has been from folks that support having short-term rentals here.
I do believe the chief administrator has had several calls that were not in favor of having short-term rentals.
We did. That's what kind of provoked this discussion when it came about last year. There were complaints about a short-term rental property and the activity going on there. That's kind of what prompted this. So we don't have many complaints, as was stated by several council members, but that is what did trigger the initial discussion, was a short-term rental and concerns about it being in one of the neighborhoods.
Mr. Nestico, have those complaints subsided at that facility?
They have, although the one that was previously receiving complaints was being rented out during the winter months, and we got the complaint, I think, in late winter, early spring. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and I've never spoken with the individuals that own that property, but through various feedback that I've gotten, they only rented it out in the winter months. I think that they were maybe snowbirds or something like that, where they would travel south in the winter, and so they would rent the property out then. But in the summer, they would come back to the area. So I haven't heard anything since. I don't know if that's the case. That was the feedback I originally received. So I don't have much of an update on it.
Mike, when we had an issue with that, having no ordinance, we had no regulations, we had no permitting, we had no anything in place for it. So I think if anything, putting that type of thing in place, would be what would be addressing those types of issues.
No one will be aware that it is an Airbnb causing the problem.
Correct.
It'll be
And if the same one got, so many warnings or whatever it be by code enforcement, you no longer have a permit to do that. I mean, it's just how it goes. But that's how.
Our objections was, at the beginning, was if we had short-term rentals, this was what we thought. You people completely changed the subject. It's a whole different issue. Not doing it at all.
That's illegal. That would be illegal for us to forbid short-term rentals.
Yeah, you can't say you can't do it anywhere.
No, we weren't saying that. We were saying we didn't want it in residential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think basically the divide is you have at least 4 individuals saying at this point it's been one property that generated some calls, so therefore that doesn't warrant government intervention. Let's try to deal with that one property through the usual means. Let's come up with a permitting process and then handle that one property.
Well, we're making our opinions because it did come up that they wanted short-term rentals.
Well, that one person, yeah.
Well, it came up on the agenda, sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if it would have been dropped from the beginning, we wouldn't have gone this far.
I couldn't agree
Because it
more.
wasn't an issue.
No, it makes sense. I think my concern would be, and Mr. Long would probably know the legal term better than me. I want to say it's something like de facto exclusion, but if we were to eliminate the residential areas and say only, say, business and mixed use, I don't know that business has rooms and.
Yeah, mixed use probably does. I don't even want to get into that because we're not into constitutional issues right now, and I just don't even want to bite that off unless, if you're okay with that, Wes.
Yeah, I just don't want to exclude it
Yeah,
by limiting it too much.
My understanding is whether you want an ordinance at all, or whether you want an ordinance of some sort, and if you want an ordinance of some sort, what areas are you going to be prohibiting short-term rentals, and what areas will you permit it? You can't have a permit process without an ordinance.
Oh, absolutely, agreed.
Okay.
And just to be clear, I don't think we're up against any exclusionary zoning, because even if we did allow it in mixed use and business, I think there's still enough in mixed use. They're not going to win that. This is more just legislative for this council.
It's just a permitting.
Absolutely. So, Mac, did you have something to say?
No, I agree with that.
So at this point, I think we do understand the divide. I think it's just philosophical. Is there anything that anyone else would like to say on this matter?
I'd like to table the issue.
I would like a roll call vote when we vote, please.
Well, and just so we're clear, this is an unofficial roll call. We're just doing this to see where everybody stands so we can give staff direction. We're all on the same page with that?
Yeah, until 14A.
Well, but
Right.
I'm going to have my own questions about 14A, because we have to make sure this ordinance is written the way we like it before we advertise
Okay.
it.
Yeah, I agree.
So I don't know if we really want to advertise it no matter what. But again, this will be, we've waited 2 months for everybody to be here. So this is going to be pretty final direction to staff as to how we want this written. So, is there anything else anybody wants to say before we take this sort of unofficial roll call?
So it would be an unofficial roll call to see where we stand, and then we would give staff direction to write that ordinance,
I think at this point,
and then we would vote on it.
I think at this point, it's, you want an ordinance of any sort.
yeah. So firstly, if we really want to do this parliamentary procedure, there's been a motion to table. Is there a second for the motion to table? Okay, so the motion to table's gone. So we're going to figure out unofficially where everybody stands on this. To me,
Just to clarify, are we voting the straw vote, yes, no, that we even want an ordinance? Or are we voting the straw vote based on the ordinance that we currently have a draft of, which includes a 5-acre or more requirement, includes allowing it in rural, or in residential areas, et cetera?
let me say, here's the way I view it based on the discussion that's occurred tonight. Forget about the ordinance as it exists now.
Okay.
It would seem to me that essentially there are individuals on council who want to say this should only be allowed in mixed-use business, commercial type areas. And then there are other individuals on council who say, we're not going to regulate where this is. We are only going to do permitting. So I think if we're going to do this straw vote, if you say yes, you are in favor of permitting and registration, but you are against any zoning restrictions. Okay, so that would be a yay vote. If it's a nay vote, then that to me is you're saying you want it only in mixed use, business, commercial. As far as what if we just have no ordinance as a third option, I think that was kind of the motion to table that didn't get a second.
Can I?
That was kind of
can I-
quick, actually.
I didn't hear the
Okay.
table thing, so could I
So at this point,
make a motion to table it again?
sure.
Okay.
So at this point, there's been a motion to table. So if it's tabled, that means we're just not going to do anything with it. We're going to put it on an agenda in the future and hope 7 people are here.
I'll second his motion to table.
Okay, so there's been a motion and a second to table. So at this point, we are going to do a roll call for the motion to table. So Verdale, when you get a chance, can I have a roll call? And this is just on the motion to table. So if you vote yes, we are tabling this. If you vote no, we'll do our unofficial vote tonight. So Verdale, please.
Table this. Mr. Dice?
No.
Yes, good.
Mr. Spadaro?
Yes.
Mrs. Ling?
No.
Dr. Lee Corns?
No.
Mr. Stepanovich?
Yes.
Mr. Lemak?
No.
Mr. McKenna?
No.
Okay, so the motion to table has failed. So we will be giving direction to staff tonight about how we want them to proceed. So again, and it sounded like Tony and Carl, you guys said you weren't exactly sure about this. So to me, this vote we're about to have, unofficial, it's going to be an unofficial roll call vote. If you vote yay, that means you are in favor of an ordinance that deals with permitting and registration, but no zoning requirements. Everybody understand what happens if you vote yay?
Yes.
If you vote no, you are saying, I disagree with that, there should be zoning requirements. So a no vote means there needs to be zoning requirements on this short-term rental ordinance. Does everybody understand what a no is? Okay. So with that, again, this is just a totally unofficial roll call to give some direction to staff about this issue. So for Dale, again, can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Dice?
Yes.
Mr. Spadaro?
Yes.
Mrs. Ling?
Yes.
Dr. Lee Corns?
Yes.
Mr. Stepanovich?
Yes.
Mr. Lemak?
No.
Okay.
Mr. McKenna?
Yes.
Okay, well, the motion passes. Direction has been given to staff that they should draft an ordinance that deals with registration and permitting requirements
And allowing it in any zoning.
and allowing them in any zoning. So essentially, it is write an ordinance that does not in any way regulate or impact zoning. Okay? Make sense?
Does, and I will clarify, I know this answer already, but we are eliminating the 5-acre requirement as well, is that
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yes.
And allowing it in any district.
Yeah. Just,
Okay.
To that point, or would you like me to wait? I'm guessing we're going to end up obviously tabling 14A then.
yeah, I'm going to suggest we table 14A.
To that point, then I'd like to raise one other consideration for
Table 14.
deliberation.
Okay.
Expressed, when I went through the ordinance, I do feel like right now it says a max occupancy of 2 people per bedroom, which is pretty standard for rentals, and no more than an additional 2 for a max of 8 people, whichever is less. I think a lot of that makes sense, but we do have quite a number in Murraysville in particular, of 5-bedroom homes. I would prefer to see that piece state a max of 2 people per bedroom, an additional 2, at a max of 10 occupants, whichever is less. So if there's a 6-bedroom house, forget it. If there's a 10-bedroom house, forget it. But I'd like to see that number update from 8 to 10, because I think that is in the spirit of where we're moving as a council to property owners' rights and the types of dwellings that may be utilized as short-term rentals. So I don't know how others feel
I'd be
about
in
that.
agreement with you, but I think we're getting into the minutia now that we should just wait and let the,
I'll say this, sounds to me like that's pretty reasonable, so let's direct staff to incorporate that into the ordinance. That being said, I think now that we've actually given staff direction, because we've kicked this around a lot, the next step is for staff to create an ordinance based on this direction, and then we as a council will meet and discuss all.
It does. I was going to cover one thing, and we may say, let's just forget about it, Carl, but last meeting, I was surprised that we were not going to have a vote. Okay, and the comment was, well, there's 6 people here, but we had a quorum. So I'm not sure why we didn't.
Well,
the vice president, he didn't know anything about it either.
At a previous meeting, the president had said that we would not hold a vote until we had a full council present. That's why we didn't have the vote.
I think we had all, at that time, we had all agreed, yes, this has been so contentious that, or not contentious, but such a critical issue in some minds that
Well,
we
if
wanted
that's
a
the
full quorum.
case, okay, because I think what it should be, it can't be just one person. Apparently, it wasn't one person. This is what, okay.
Well, that's why before we hadn't vote on it, and at the end of the day, I'll say this, blame Tony, because he was the president at the time, but he could have said, oh no, we're voting. And that
He's
would
a
have
short timer, let's blame him.
I'll take the blame.
Okay.
Okay, so more TBD on that issue, but I think tonight we've given direction to staff and we should move on if there's no final comments. Okay? Okay, hearing none, that brings us to our action items. Can I have a motion for 13A?
I'd like to make a motion to authorize the chief administrator to consent to the repository sale of the property located at tax map number 49-16-14-0-103, located at 6283 Old William Penn Highway, to prospective buyers Daniel Randolph and Daniel McKenna.
Second.
Mr. President, I'll be abstaining from vote because one of the purchasers is my youngest brother.
Any other comments on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Did you want to comment?
What happened to
I
Dane?
think we needed to make a motion. Did somebody make?
I thought you
You
made
did,
a
I
motion.
seconded. You didn't make any comment. You usually,
I can certainly provide
usually
comment.
say a
thought
little
you made a
comment.
motion.
I'd
You
like to
said
hear
I
what you
did.
had
made a
to say
motion,
about
second.
this before I vote.
Yeah, I can provide some feedback. This property was, this was the property that came before us several months ago regarding demolition, and it was approved through council to demolish this property. Coinciding with that decision, this property was also moving through the county's tax sale process. It ultimately reached the repository, which is the final step in the tax sale process at the county level, in which properties kind of go into, they ultimately enter the ability to have a buyer come forward and just put a bid on the property. You don't have to go to a hearing or anything like that. It just becomes available to the public at large. At that point, this property did go into the repository right around the same time that we approved the demolition. Ultimately, these buyers came forward and placed a bid on the property. They are aware that the property is in a poor condition and it does need to be demolished. They will have a decision to make as to whether they demolish it or if there is any way to attempt to repair it. But we've had discussion with the buyers. I think that staff would recommend that council approve this item, have a taxpayer become responsible for the property, and ultimately we'll see it through to some sort of conclusion whether they repair the property or demolish it and rebuild.
Okay. Any other comments on that property? Okay, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
One abstain.
One
I
abstention.
know you abstained, right. One abstain from Matt.
Extension, yeah.
Okay, you tabled,
We have to table it officially.
Hmm?
We have to table it officially.
Yeah.
Do we need a
don't
motion
think
to
it was a
table?
motion.
I don't have to follow the agenda, right? I can
that's
just-
what I was going to say.
I don't think there was a motion to table 14A, was
No.
there?
Can I make the motion to table directly, or do I need to make a motion to advertise it, then vote that down, and then change it? Based on
I just make a motion.
Okay. Make a motion to table ordinance number 1076-23, an ordinance adding chapter 219 to the Code of the Municipality of Murraysville to regulate short-term rental units within the municipality and establish penalties for violations.
Second the motion.
Jamie and Carl, thank you. Any objections? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're on B.
Okay.
14B.
Yep, thank you. I have a motion for 14B, please.
I'd like to make a motion to approve SP-2-23 Eaton Park and addition and various improvements to the existing structure, 4584 William Penn Highway, B, business zoning.
Second.
Thank you, Jason and Jamie Ling. Michael?
Yes, council should recall the folks from Eaton Park were here last meeting and discussed the various improvements and addition that would be made at the property. Council must approve all land development applications, and that is why this item is before you. The Planning Commission recommended approval at their October 10th meeting of this year, and staff recommends approval of this item.
Did they add the stop sign? Did they relocate the stop sign that was raised as a concern by Mr. McKenna? Because maybe I'm missing that in the plans, but I'm not seeing that stop sign's been relocated, and it's going to be critical for it to be relocated.
I haven't been made aware.
Wait, yes, hello?
Sure,
He was raising his hand.
sorry.
Past you, sir.
Jesse Stock, representing Eaton Park location. We did. The drawings are over here. We just didn't get them over digitally, but that is revised.
Perfect. Then provided that that is in the drawings indeed as reviewed by staff, then that was my only concern outstanding.
Good question.
Awesome.
Remembering that.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns from council?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. That brings us to 15A. Can I have a motion, please?
I'd like to make a motion to award a contract for DPW 323 Duff Park Bridge Repair Project to Kokorin Contracting in the amount not to exceed $75,000.
Second.
I think that was Carl and Tony. Michael?
I apologize, I was talking with the solicitor. You're asking me for
15A, yep.
feedback on item 15A?
Duff Park Bridge.
This is the Duff Park Bridge Repair Project. The contract would be not to exceed $75,000 as stated in the tentative motion there. This project was put out to bid earlier in the year. And then again, in October, sealed bids were opened. On October 12th, there were 2 bids received, and the low bid is Kirkland Contracting in the amount of $75,000. This will be paid through the Capital Improvement Program, and staff recommends adoption, approval of this item.
Okay. Questions or concerns from council? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to old business. Any old business from anyone this evening?
I have a question
Sure.
about our meeting dates.
Okay.
I know for this month, we had said we were going to keep it, I think that's what we had said in the email exchange, keep it for the normal third Wednesday, but for December, did we come up with any conclusion on that?
Sure, and I can answer that, and I apologize to council and also the public for any confusion. We discussed at the last meeting advertising 2 new dates, Tuesday, November 14th, and also Tuesday, December 19th. It turns out that we do have a planning commission meeting already scheduled for the existing Tuesday, November 14th date. So following my feedback to council, we only advertised 1 new meeting date. That was the December date. So we did not advertise a new date for November, so that date would remain the same, Wednesday, November 15th, as originally scheduled. The only advertisement that went out was for a revised December meeting date, changing it from Wednesday the 20th to the new date of Tuesday, December 19th. So provided there are no other issues, those would be the subsequent meeting dates. And again, I'll say that again one more time so that the public is fully aware. Our next meeting in November will be Wednesday, November 15th, as originally scheduled. Following that, we would meet on the first Wednesday of December, that's the 6th. And then the next meeting in December would be the revised date of Tuesday, December 19th, all meetings at 7 p.m.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. And thanks again to everyone on council.
It'll be weird for Tony and I. Our last meeting ever will be a Tuesday after 8 years
Yeah.
of Wednesdays.
You too. And the
That's
tears
so
will
funny, that's gonna
flow,
be
right?
Who are they going to be glad to get rid of? You or me?
I know where we can be.
Neither.
Both of us.
No, never. You guys are
Alrighty.
awesome. We'll miss you.
Any new business from anyone?
Mr. Dice?
Yeah.
One old business, if I may. There was a discussion at the last meeting regarding the title issues for the oil and gas under Duff Park. That has been vetted, and it has been determined that the municipality does not own the oil and gas rights under all of the acreage in Duff Park, but does own the oil and gas rights under 74.2925 acres.
Okay.
So I was asking Mr. Nestico if we advertised that ordinance for passage at the October 18th meeting. We definitely decided to table action on it because of the title issue. I need to check.
And so I have confirmation here that we did advertise the ordinance at a prior meeting. The action item at last month's council meeting was to adopt the ordinance. We did table that decision, but that ordinance does include all of the tax map parcel numbers. So at this point, I would imagine that we would have to go back to the drawing board and re-advertise an updated ordinance with the correct parcel numbers and then come back at a subsequent meeting. So I don't know that there's anything to do this evening. If we'll have to.
Put it on the agenda for a motion to advertise at the November 15th meeting with the consideration of passage at the first meeting in December.
Wes, what was the acreage again on that? 77?
74.2925 acres. The payment to the municipality would be $185,731.25.
And how much did we not own as a?
Well, I didn't do the
What was
exact
the total
difference.
originally when
It was
you?
about 155 acres.
Sounds about right.
Wes, who owns the remaining?
The total
The
was
oil and gas rights under the portion that was
50%.
purchased from the Duff heirs
A little bit less than 50.
was reserved for many, many, many Duff heirs. If anybody's had an opportunity to see that indenture, there was probably 30, 40 signatures to it.
Right.
Mr. and Mrs. Van de Ven donated a piece of property to the municipality, approximately 48 acres, and they reserved the oil and gas rights. And the oil and gas rights under the old, where the old municipal building was. We do not own the oil and gas rights under that portion of the property that's owned by the municipality. It's right off of School Road South. Those are the three big pieces that come to my mind, Mr. Stepanovich.
And Wes, that
But I think
doesn't
there's a
mean,
9-acre piece that we don't own.
that doesn't mean that those oil and gas rights won't be sold too. They'll just be by those owners. They'll each have the individual right to make that decision
Those
according to their
individuals
proposal.
will have the right to lease the oil and gas rights, correct?
Okay.
Okay. Any questions or concerns from council about that issue? Very good update. Okay, any new business? Hearing none, we do have an executive session tonight to discuss potential litigation. There will be no action coming out of that, so if there's nothing further, can I have a motion to adjourn to executive session?
Motion to adjourn to executive session.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, motion passes. Thanks, everybody.